and welcome to All Aboard, a channel dedicated to boards of all kinds. Today we're here to talk about types of snowboard, and if you're new to snowboarding or have been at it for a while but riding the same board or two, you might find yourself checking out boards and getting a bit confused with all the tech behind it. Snowboards have come a long way in the last few years. There are so many boards out there and many brands to choose from, so where do we even start? Hopefully today I can help organize information for you. I truly believe that the way to make the best choice is if you have at least a minimal understanding of the basics behind the product. That way, when you go to the store and they start giving you recommendations, at least you know what they're talking about. When we look at the main differences between snowboards, we can define them using the following 4 features. We have core or materials, we have bend or profile, shape, and flex. Each board offers a different combination of these features that determine its strength and personality. Now, I won't get into core too much, but just in general, this means what types of wood and other materials were used, how are the wood grains positioned, and how are the layers of fiberglass laid, all of which will determine if the board is lighter or heavier, is it softer or stiffer, and how strong it is. Different companies use different materials and combinations change and evolve all the time. So, although this information might not affect the choice you make, it's good to know there are these differences. For our purpose today, we're going to focus on the 3 most important features for you to consider when choosing a board: the bend and profile, the shape, and the flex. Perhaps the most significant and versatile of all 3 features is the board bend, basically the profile of the board. A snowboard profile is the line you see when you look at it from the side on a flat surface. We'll go over camber, when it's rising from the surface, a rocker, which is the banana shape, and the flat profiles, and all the combinations in the hybrid boards. Understanding the different board profiles can help you find which board is right for the conditions, the terrain that you ride in, and your riding style. So let's start. The side profile of a camber looks like a rainbow, meaning the center of the board is lifted off the ground. Camber has been the dominant board profile in snowboarding since the beginning. Camber boards deliver precise and powerful turns. They distribute the weight on the board for continuous edge control. They have lots of pop due to that bend that really wants to spring back. Advanced riders tend to prefer this bend, especially for hard carving and high-speed riding. But there are also park camber snowboards that are softer but will still deliver the amazing pop and the control due to the bend. One thing to remember: camber boards are not as forgiving and can be more difficult to learn and progress on compared to some of the other bends. Rocker is basically the opposite of camber and will have a banana shape. So if you put it on the table, it will spin on its middle, which is the only point of contact with the ground when you're not on it. At first, companies made rocker boards, but soon they realized that these boards don't hold their edge well enough. So most rocker boards today come as part of a hybrid, as you will see in a little bit. Flat top boards run perfectly flat for the length of the board, with a bit of an early rise in the tip and the tail. The flat shape board will give you the stability and precision as you might like in a camber board, but also some catch-free riding and the playfulness of the rocker because of those high tips. With no camber to press on, turning takes very little energy to initiate. Overall, flat boards perform well in all conditions, from powder to hard-packed and groomers. It is a great board profile for any rider. Hybrid profiles are generally considered more forgiving because the tip and the tail are lifted off the ground. So let's take a look at some of the main categories in hybrid boards. First, we have the hybrid camber rocker, as Bern calls it, the Flying V. This is a hybrid of camber and rocker, which kind of gives you the best of both worlds. It has the camber underneath both feet, and the rocker between the feet as well as outside. The nose and the tail are lifted off the snow, which makes it super playful, floaty ride, and a good performance in deep powder. Something to remember, The Camber Rocker Flying V can make a board feel softer than its camber equivalent, even if they're made of the same materials. In these boards, the camber underfoot gives you the edge control and power where you want it, but at the same time, they're a bit more forgiving. So overall, these boards will be great for beginners, intermediates, and freestyle riders, and will be a great board for progression. The second hybrid is the flat camber hybrid, or pure pop, as Bern calls them. These boards will have camber all the way outside the bindings, then flat zones to continue for a few centimeters of length, and transitioning into the rise near the nose and the tail. The flat zones outside the feet increase the pop because they provide an additional rebound. The early rise in the tip and the tail add to the float. This hybrid profile is basically a camber light. It's a mix between the playful flat bend and the precise camber bend. Another category in board profile is the directional boards that are perhaps a bit more specific. First, we have the directional camber. In directional camber, we have a camber section under both feet with rocker that adds lift to the nose, so you have the momentum and stability through the turns in variable conditions. Directional camber is great for a rider who wants the traditional camber power, but also something that will gain speed and float easier in powder. The second directional board is the directional flat top. This will have the most powder-specific board bend. Again, we have the rocker in the nose for stability, only here it transitions into flat section just before the front foot and for the rest of the board. This combination promotes lift and float for deeper snow, but at the same time, the stability and control of the flat board. Now let's talk about shape. This is the actual shape of the board when you look at it from the top, mostly how the nose compares to the tail. In general, we have twin shape and directional shape, so let's take a look. In twin shape boards, we will get a board that is perfectly symmetrical for a balanced ride. It's equally good for riding regular and switch, and overall, great balance for freestyle ability. The other shape is the directional boards. These boards will have a small or noticeable difference in the shape, length, and flex between the tail and the nose. In general, riding switch on these boards is definitely possible, although it will feel different. The main features that we find in directional boards are that the profile could change between the tail and the nose. Often, the tail would have stiffer flex than the nose. Sometimes it will have a setback stance. And in some cases, like in the asymmetrical twin, there will be a side cut that will also be different and will favor riding one side over another. We could also have higher nose compared to the tail to allow it to lift in powder. Typically, these boards will have tapered nose over the tail and will usually also have a directional flex, so uneven stiffness, which we will talk about in a bit. Most of the directional boards will have medium to stiff flex that will give them edge-to-edge control in high speeds and feel more stable. So these boards will be great for any extreme rides such as backcountry riding, tree runs, and steeps. The last board feature we'll talk about is flex. And when we talk about flex, we're talking stiffness level. But try not to think of it as better or worse. Rather, think of flex as between playful and stable, and everything in between. So, if we gave it a number, it would be anything between 1 being the softest and most playful, to 10 being the stiffest and most stable. In general, we have two types of flex. Twin flex will be a board that is perfectly symmetrical from tip to tail and will provide a balanced ride that is equally versatile in both regular and switch. The other flex is directional flex. These boards will have different flex throughout the board with increased pop in the tail and more resilient nose. Same as we mentioned in the directional shape, these boards allow a rider to easily maintain control in all terrains and conditions. Now that you understand the basics of what makes a snowboard, let's take a look at some examples. Obviously, you can mix different bends with shapes and flex, so there are so many options. These are just a few. To make things a bit easier to follow, I'll show you the board by different bends, so camber, flat or hybrid, and we can see the variations of the shape and the flex within each category. Here we have Burns the Acer. This is a board with flat bend, twin shape and twin flex. The flat top is good for deep powder and keeping stable control. It has a rocker in the tip and the tail for a catch-free ride. The twin shape and the twin flex feels good in both directions, regular and goofy. The result is a very forgiving and stable board, so overall a great board for learning and progressing. Let's take a look at another flat board. This is Burns Power Wrench. This is a unisex powder board, very floaty in deep powder. It has a directional shape with big taper in the nose to keep it up riding in deep conditions. Now let's take a look at a couple of camber boards. This is Burns Women's Talent Scout. We have full camber with twin shape and twin flex. It's a hard-charging part board. The full camber is aggressive and stable with a lot of power and control, and the true twin allows us to ride in regular and goofy. This is Burns Storyboard, another full camber board, but unlike the previous one, it's a directional camber. We have a longer nose that is tapered, and directional flex to increase the pop in the tail. This is another high-end board, a full charger with an early rise nose to add float in the powder. Now let's take a look at a hybrid board. This is Burns Custom Flying V. Because of the hybrid shape, it's a more forgiving board than a true camber. It's versatile and easy to turn. We have rocker between the feet and more rocker on the tip and the tail to help with the float. The camber underneath the feet will hold edge in variable conditions. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope this video was helpful. As always, I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to post or ask any questions in the comments below. For other fun content on snowboarding, surfing and skateboarding, please subscribe and check out the other videos.